So thank you, Marit, for taking the time to meet with me today. Let's go through the interview.
Thank you.
So what is the role of strategic communications for a B2B supplier in the iGaming industry? And how do you see PR influencing market perception and trust?
Well, I think in iGaming, reputation really is everything. PR is how you build that trust before someone even meets you or your team. For Alea, that means being consistent about our messaging, whether that's in an article, in a LinkedIn post, discussion, and making sure that the story we're telling is genuine. I mean, in this industry, especially if you've been around, for as long as I have, which is sort of over 15 years now, you see a lot of new companies come up and come down. Some work, some don't. So really, I think when operators are looking at game aggregators, it's more than just about sort of the features and the pricing. Really, you have to start. Really, they're asking themselves, will this company be around in 5 years? And do they understand compliance or what it's like to be an operator? If something goes wrong at 2 a.m., will they actually pick up the phone? And that's where communication really comes in, because we can answer all these questions before they're even asked and lead that sort of conversation, not just in terms of what we do, but making sure that we are being part of the right industry conversation in terms of when a new regulation drops in or there's a major industry shift. Will the operators think of us and not just as another supplier trying to sell them something? We want to really be a true partner in the sense that we want to help them tackle these new shifts in regulations and find the right games for the right market and everything in between. We are sort of building that long-term mutual trust with our current clients and almost sort of making sure that our reputation follows that throughout to the wider iGaming ecosystem. In an industry just sort of filled with so much noise, you have to cut through and provide value. And value gives people perspective, and that perspective builds trust, and all before they've even met you.
Thank you, Marit. No, absolutely. I agree with that. It's very, very important, building that trust and transparency. Which brings me on to a really great question on number 2 around different markets, particularly with our audience. So how do you tailor communications for different markets, such as Europe versus LATAM, for example, while keeping brand voice consistent?
Well, ultimately, you have to keep Alea's voice the same everywhere. But you can adapt the story that you tell. In LATAM, I would say that content and speed are sort of the major factors for an operator, so we lean into that. And in Europe, the focus is usually on compliance, innovation, performance. It's not that any of these are more important than the others, and they're all true, but really it's about leaning into the things that matter most to the operators in the right market. In Malta, sort of anyone under the MGA license, this is really selling the story of here's how we meet the latest technical standards. In Brazil, on the other hand, really, it's more about sort of helping operators solve common challenges that we've seen in Europe many a times over, but are just starting out as new sort of pitfalls as this new market develops. In Africa, we found that actually, very interestingly, it's more about educating companies on the benefits of game aggregation. Instead of going straight to the software providers themselves. Even the channel matters, right? So I would say that in Europe, we're very active on LinkedIn, on keynotes at very important events, and just, we organize a lot of webinars around API governance and security. That is how we reach our audience in Europe. It is a well-developed market. It's where really the gaming industry sort of started. In LATAM, I would say that the interactions are a lot more about building those relationships, much more through a face-to-face partnership to begin with. So sort of our sales team is incredibly strong in that specific market. And once that's there, you sort of almost sort of double down on the messaging and make sure that everything is in their language through local industry publications where they find that sort of personal connection and they feel that you really belong in their market. So the voice, I would say, doesn't change, but the example, the emphasis, and even the media we work with do. So that way, no matter where someone hears about Alea, it feels like the same brand, just in a different language with a different emphasis.
And then last but not least, what has been your biggest marketing lesson learned from launching a new product or new feature in the iGaming space?
So right when I started at Alea, we launched a brand new client area. We revamped it, we added lots of new features. This was very exciting. But to give you context, I had recently moved from like a B2C space and onto the B2B. So really I had to adjust my thinking a little bit. Obviously, I knew it was important to tailor the messaging by region. But for me, especially on the B2C market, launch was pretty much everything. You know, you launch a new game or new product, you set it out to players, and you have a really small amount of time to get as much attention as possible before people move on to the next shiny thing, the next shiny game. It's this repeated cycle that's very fast, very quick. The launch was really the end goal. With B2B, I have found, as I've continued into Alea, there's a slower burn. So whilst launched week everything looked great with the new client area, when we were looking into sort of the numbers a little bit 6 weeks later, it was actually really interesting to see that the adoption rate of the new features was sort of a little bit all over the place. So I'd say about something close to like 78% of the European clients had adopted our new RTP configuration. So you can set the RTP per game, per software, per casino, but they actually weren't using the bulk actions to do it. So whilst the Brazilians, on the other hand, loved sort of changing all their data to the right time zone, and they were grateful for this updated game calendar, which gave them like an overview of what was coming for months on end and details on every single game. But they weren't using the RTP features. So I had to sort of change a little bit, my mindset a little bit, and realize that it couldn't just be down to the account managers to communicate these features. Like, it was down to us to continue to have that conversation where it was, people had to see the value multiple times before they acted on it. So whilst the launch created all the awareness that we wanted, especially to the outside, I would say, to sort of potential clients, oh, look, this is nice. The adoption process requires sort of a longer, sort of more thought out process that lasts over a longer period of time.